All right, so you have control of that. You've got 10 minutes on the timer,
Okay,
so take it
thank
away.
you. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Yulia Blinova, and I'm going to be talking about how the absence of motivation or the lack of motivation is not a problem. That might sound like a very ambitious topic, but bear with me. You'll see that it is really true. And I would like to start with by showing some of the quotes that I collected over the years from my students. You can see that all of them are based around the fact that the motivation, the students are lacking motivation. And I believe that if we hear these words from our students from time to time, it's not a problem. That's real life, so things happen. However, if they get into the habit of saying these things, it's a signal that something is not going well. So they're probably not as engaged in class, they're not doing their homework, they're not engaging with the language outside the classroom. They will probably stop coming to class and just drop out. So we as teachers need to understand why this happens. And one of the key questions we have to answer is, what is motivation, to understand why this happens. There are many different definitions for motivation, but here I'm using the one given by the Cambridge English Dictionary, and I like it because it highlights one very important thing about motivation, and that is it's a very intense feeling. And just like all intense feelings, it can't be there at its peak for a long time. I mean, when we're talking about great joy, great happiness, or intense pain, this is a no-brainer. This is obvious, common sense. But for some reason, lots of people believe that it's possible to keep motivation at its peak for a long time, which is not how it works, right? I mean, motivation reaches its peak and then it can go only down. And that's what happens because it is normal. So the thing about motivation is that it's great when we want to start things, right? We're feeling full of energy and enthusiasm, and we can change only our short-term behavior, unfortunately. So what is there that can help us as teachers to overcome this motivation conundrum? And my answer to this question is habits. Habits are wonderful things. And here again, you can see the definition from the Cambridge English Dictionary, which highlights the fact that habits are something that we do regularly, which is a very important thing if we're talking about learning a language, right? Engaging with it on the regular basis. And this is something that we do without actually knowing that we're doing it. This means that no motivation, no willpower are involved. This is amazing. One more great thing about habits is that they're very hard to break. And I mean, we all know this because all of us have some bad habits that we find impossible to break. They stick, which is great because it means that if we get into the habit of learning a language, it means that it's going to be there with us, no willpower, no motivation involved, and it can affect our long-term behavior. And this is what we are looking for as teachers to help our students develop. So how can we develop habits, and how can we help our students develop habits? I'm going to talk about two tried and true approaches. When I say tried and true, I mean I have used them myself and I have received great results. I mean, I got the habits I wanted to develop. The first one is the 21-day approach, and the other one is the tiny habits approach. So the 21-day approach, as the name implies, means that you have to do something for 21 days consecutively. And this is an important thing. Let's keep it in mind. If you look at the calendar view that is on the slide, you can see that 21 days are marked. But some of the days are bigger and bolder, are in big and bolder hearts. Why? Let's go back and remember that motivation is great for starting things. So when we start something, it means that we're full of energy, we can do that. But then as time goes by, we are kind of, a little reluctant to do the same thing, even though maybe at the beginning we really wanted to do that. What can help us go forward is some kind of reward or prize. So I suggest dividing this 21-day period into two parts. On day 10, you get a reward or a prize, and on the last day, of course, you celebrate your new habit, creating it, getting it, and yourself. What kind of prize can it be? People quite often think that it has to be something that you have to buy, but not necessarily. Those rewards have to be very personal. I mean, for me, the greatest prize I can get for myself is a day with my phone off, on the sofa with a book and my cat, and that would be the greatest reward, really. Think about what kind of rewards can work for you, can work for your students, brainstorm. One more thing to remember is that you were talking about developing really good habits, habits which break bad habits. Most likely you will have to try more than once. And the idea here is that you have to do something for 21 days in a row. It means that if you don't do this thing on day 5, day 6 becomes day 1. And that's okay. This is life. It's important to focus on your victories, to really celebrate them. So if you don't do this thing on day 5, do not say I have failed. Say, okay, this time around it was 5 days, next time around it's going to be 21 days, and I can totally do that. So celebrating your victories is the key. The other approach that we can use to develop a habit is the tiny habits approach. And it uses the idea that all our behaviors are triggered by something. So we hear noise and we get frightened, for instance, right? The same here. So you hear an alarm clock. This is the trigger, and it means that you have to get up, right? You get up, and then the day goes on. However, the tiny habits approach suggests connecting the new habit, the tiny habit, with the already existing one, which means that you don't need an artificial trigger. The trigger is already there in your life, so it makes it very hard to forget to do this thing. I'll give you an example of my own. For years, I had been struggling with making my bed in the morning. I think lots of you can relate. So every morning, I know that I put the kettle on to make coffee or tea. I love having a hot drink early on. So I decided that every time I put my kettle on, I'll go to the bedroom and make my bed. And then praise myself, say, well done, good job, keep it up. And actually, that worked wonderfully. Now I do not have to even think about making my bed. I do it automatically. Kettle on, I'm in the bedroom making my bed. And actually, I didn't even have to praise myself, because when I looked at my bedroom with my bed made, it looked so aesthetically pleasing that it was rewarding enough. And that's amazing. So, in other words, a tiny habit should look something like this. After I, for example, have my morning coffee, I will study Quizlet for 5 minutes, and then I will celebrate. Actually, celebration is an important part of both these approaches. Don't forget about that. People usually do all the other things, but do not celebrate. So, how can you bring these things into your classroom? First, try them yourself. Really, we are all keen on eating healthily, doing exercise, studying a new language, doing more CPD, whatnot. So try to develop a new habit using one of these approaches. Get the feeling of them. What works for you? What doesn't? Why not? Why yes? And then when your students bring their worries up to you in the classroom, like, I can't find the time, I'm not motivated, I don't feel that I can do that. Share your experience, make it personal for them, and then just suggest that they try. That's enough. That really works. And then, of course, come back to this in a few weeks or maybe in a few days. In my experience, it works wonders, and it really helps the learners to become independent and shapes them into lifelong learners. And they can develop all kinds of habits, not only English language learning habits. So thank you very much for having me. Come chat with me about motivation, time management, language learning, and language teaching on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, I have a lot of bad habits that I need to break. When you have more than 10 minutes, I can send you a list. I've made a PowerPoint. Thanks so much.
That's the first step, admitting that you have something to work on.
Yes, that's what they say. That's step one, is admitting that you have a problem, right?